you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the right honourable gentleman to his position, and I thank him for an advance copy of his statement. No one underestimates this country, but the country is deeply worried that the new Prime Minister overestimates himself. He inherits a country that's been held back by 9 years of austerity. That's hit children and young people the hardest. Their youth centres have closed, their school funding cut, college budgets slashed, and with the help of the Liberal Democrats, tuition fees have trebled. Their housing costs are higher than ever. Their jobs are lower paid. Opportunity and freedom have been taken away. Austerity was always a political choice, never an economic necessity.
Order. I indicated that people wouldn't shout down the Prime Minister. Precisely the same applies to the Leader of the Opposition. Don't try it. You're wasting your vocal cords, and above all, it won't work. The right honourable gentleman will be heard, and these exchanges will take as long as they will take, whatever other appointments people might have. The right honourable gentleman will be heard. Stop it. Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. His predecessor promised to end austerity, but spectacularly failed to deliver. People do not trust his Prime Minister to make the right choices for the majority of people in this country, when he's also promising tax giveaways to the richest and big business, his own party's funders. So, can he now indicate when he will set out the detail of the exact funding settlement for our schools, our hard-pressed local authorities and police, so they can start planning now? We must also address the deep regional inequalities in this country. The Northern Powerhouse has been massively underpowered. The Midlands engine has not been fuelled. So will he match Labour's commitment to a $500 billion investment fund to rebalance this country through regional development banks and a national transformation fund? He has hastily thrown together a hard right cabinet, and I've just a couple of questions, Mr. Speaker, on those appointments. Given his first appointment is the Home Secretary, the first Home Secretary for a generation to support the death penalty, can the Prime Minister assure the House now that his government has no plans to try and bring back capital punishment to this country? And before appointing the new Education Secretary, was the Prime Minister given sight of the Huawei leak investigation by the Cabinet Secretary? I'm deeply alarmed to see no plan for Brexit. He was in the Cabinet that accepted the backstop and, of course, voted for it on the 30th of March this year. It would be welcome if he could set out what he finds so objectionable, having voted for it less than 4 months ago. Can he explain this flip-flopping? The House will have both a sense of déjà vu and of trepidation at a Prime Minister setting out rigid red lines and an artificial timetable. There is something eerily familiar about a Prime Minister marching off to Europe with demands to scrap the backstop. So how does the Prime Minister think he will succeed where his predecessor failed? However, I do welcome the Prime Minister's commitment to finally guarantee the rights of European Union citizens. It's a great shame that this offer has only been made now, more than 3 years after this party put that proposal before this House. Our friends, neighbours, family should never have been treated as bargaining chips, causing untold stress and worry to people that have worked so hard for this community, this country and the communities that we make up. If the Prime Minister continues to pursue a reckless no deal, does he accept that he would be directly flouting the expressed will of this Parliament? Industry, business and unions have been absolutely clear about the threat that it poses. No deal means no steel, no car industry, food prices dramatically rising and huge job losses. Make UK, representing much of manufacturing industry, says no deal would be the height of economic lunacy. Companies from Toyota to Asda have been clear about the dangers of no deal. Is the Prime Minister still guided by his business policy? Mr. Speaker, those recklessly advocating no deal won't be the ones who lose out. The wealthy elite that funds him and his party will not lose their jobs, see their living standards cut or face higher food bills. Mr. Speaker, if the Prime Minister has confidence in his plan once he's decided what it is, he should go back to the people with that plan. Labour will oppose any deal that fails to protect jobs. We will oppose any deal that fails to protect jobs, workers' rights or environmental protections. And if he has the confidence to put that decision back to the people, we would, in those circumstances, campaign to remain. Mr. Speaker, the office of Mr. Speaker.
It'll take as long as it takes. I've got plenty of time. I'm totally untroubled by these matters. Jeremy Corbyn.
Mr. Speaker, the office of Prime Minister requires integrity and honesty. So will he correct his claim that kipper exports from the Isle of Man to the UK are subject to EU regulations? Will he also acknowledge that the £39 billion is now £33 billion, due over 30 years, and has been legally committed to be paid by his predecessor? This is a phony threat about a fake pot of money made by the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we also face a climate emergency, so will he take the urgent actions necessary? Will he ban fracking? Would he back real ingenuity like the Swansea Bay tidal lagoon? Will he increase investment in carbon capture and storage? Will he back our solar industry and onshore wind, so devastated over the last 9 years? Will he set out a credible plan to reach net zero? Mr. Speaker, I note the climate change denying US President has already labelled him Britain's Trump and welcomed his commitment to work with Nigel Farage. Could Britain Trump take this opportunity to rule out once and for all that our NHS is not going to be part of any trade deal with President Trump and the USA? Will he make it clear that our National Health Service is not going to be sold to American healthcare companies? Mr. Speaker, people fear that far from wanting to take back control, the new Prime Minister would effectively make us a vassal state of Trump's America? Will he ask the new Foreign Secretary to prioritise the release of Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe? And is he working with European partners to restore the Iran nuclear deal and de-escalate tensions in the Gulf? Mr. Speaker, the challenge to end austerity, tackle inequality, resolve Brexit and tackle the climate emergency are what will define the new Prime Minister. Instead, we have a hard-right cabinet staking everything on tax cuts for the few and a reckless race to the bottom Brexit. He says he has pluck, nerve and ambition. Our country does not need arm-waving bluster, but competence, seriousness, and after a decade of divisive policies for the few, to focus for once on the interests of the many.
Mr. Speaker, I struggle to discover a serious question in that, but I'll make one answer, one important point that is worth making, which is that under no circumstances will we agree to any deal, any free trade deal that put the NHS on the table. It is not for sale. And I would remind the right honourable gentleman that for 44 years of its 71 years of glorious existence, it is the NHS that has benefited from Conservative policies and Conservative government. That unless you support wealth creation, unless you believe in British business and British enterprise and British industry, you will not have the funds. Unless you have a strong economy, you will not be able to pay for a fantastic NHS, Mr. Speaker. And that is a lesson that the honourable gentleman, right honourable gentleman, simply doesn't get. And I struggled to see the country. I struggled to see the country he described in his description of the United Kingdom today, because the reality, Mr. Speaker, is that unemployment is, of course, down under the Conservatives to the lowest level since the 1970s. Crime is actually down a third since 2010. We have record investment, record inward investment in this country, £1.3 trillion coming. That's fantastic new electric car factories.
Order! Mr. MacDonald, you really are at times a reckless delinquent. Calm yourself, man. I know you get very irate because you feel passionately, and I respect your passion, but I don't respect your delinquency. Calm yourself, man. Take some sort of soothing medicament and you'll feel better as a consequence. The Prime Minister.
They don't like it, but the truth is that there were more homes built in this country last year than in any year in the last 31 years bar one. Wages are now outperforming inflation for the first time in a decade. The living wage, a Conservative policy. Which I am proud to say I championed in London and was then stolen by our wonderful Conservative government and put into a national policy. The living wage has expanded the incomes of those who receive it by £4,500 since 2010. That is a fantastic achievement, and it is a Conservative achievement. The right honourable gentleman asks about trust and who can you trust to run how on earth? And he asks about Iran. Mr. Speaker, a right honourable gentleman who has been paid by Press TV of Iran, who repeatedly sides with the mullahs of Tehran rather than our friends in the United States over what is happening in the Persian Gulf. How incredible that we should even think of entrusting that gentleman with the stewardship of this country's security. But worse than that, by far, Mr. Speaker, this is a right honourable gentleman who is set on an economic policy together with the shadow Chancellor, who was sacked by Ken Livingstone for being too left-wing. Sacked for fabricating a budget. He forged a budget, sacked for forging a budget. He would raise taxes on inheritance, Mr. Speaker. He would raise taxes on pensions. I am answering. I'm telling you, Mr.
Order! order! Mr. Lavery, you're another overexcitable denizen of the House. Calm yourself. It would be therapeutic for you to do so. There's far too much noise on both sides of the House, and I fear that the noise on the front bench is proving contagious, and I note certain backbenchers who are becoming overexcitable, and they must restrain themselves. And I know the Prime Minister will, of course, be both passionate and restrained. The Prime Minister.
But it is only with an effort that I can master my feelings here, Mr. Speaker, because the right honourable gentleman will not only put up taxes on inheritance and pensions and corporations, he would put up taxes. He would put up taxes on income to 50p and above. He would put up taxes on income. There he is, the forger of the budget of 1984, Mr. Speaker. He would put up, give him a chance, he would put up taxes not just on homes but on gardens, Mr. Speaker. And he speaks about trust in our democracy. He speaks about trust in our democracy, Mr. Speaker. And I have to say, a most extraordinary thing has just happened today. Did anybody notice what happened today? Did anybody notice the terrible metamorphosis that took place? Like the final scene of Invasion of the Body Snatchers? At last, this long-standing Eurosceptic, the right honourable gentleman, has been captured, he has been jugulated, he has been reprogrammed by his honourable friends, he has been turned now into a Remainer. He has turned Labour into the party in all the flip-flops he has performed in his tergiversating career. That is the one for which I think he will pay the highest price. Because it is this party now, this party, this government, that is clearly on the side of democracy in this country. It is this party that is on the side of the people who voted so overwhelmingly in 2016. It is this party that will deliver the mandate that they gave to this Parliament, and which, by the way, this Parliament promised time and time and time again to deliver. And indeed, the right honourable gentleman and all his colleagues promised to deliver it. And the reality now is that we are the party of the people. We are the party of the many. We are the party of the many, and they are the party of the few. We will take this country forwards. They, Mr. Speaker, will take it backwards.